Another day, another fiery protest raging yet again in Minneapolis after cops fatally shoot armed fugitive. Yes, some rioting erupted in Minneapolis at George Floyd Square, the far left no-go zone. See, police tried to recapture this location the other day, and within like an hour, I think, Antifa and BLM came back and just re-seized this area. And that's going to keep happening because we don't have a national conversation around how to stop the extremists. Now it's Friday. Happy Friday, everybody. You know what that means? It means that tonight will probably be very serious riots, maybe even around the country. A man was shot and killed by police after all. He was armed, though. So maybe it just really depends on how tired everyone is. I've been seeing a lot of posts from people where they're just like, I'm just so tired. And I'm like, bro, I feel you, man. How many videos I'm going to make about another riot happens and the police arrest some people. The DAs drop the charges. It happens again. And then over in Congress, the Democrats will just start talking about January 6th again. And we won't actually have any real movement on this. Seems to be the case. And so people are tired. I'm sure many people on the left are tired because they're not really doing much other than, well, I guess it's a gradual erosion. So they're gaining ground in that capacity. On our end, I can probably just Google search riot every day and find a story like this and just make another video where I say the same thing. So what do we do? Well, I'll tell you one thing. First, I will go through the news and explain to you what's happening because we've got this man who was shot and killed, and we'll learn about what happened with that. But I want to stress the importance of the vlog we set up, youtube.com/castcastle, because we're trying to make cultural content that counters leftist cultural content. You turn on these movies, you watch these vlogs, and many of these people just push establishment woke talking points. I don't care to do that. I don't care to pander to anybody's tribe. And I'll give you one really good example of the importance of building culture outside of just reporting the news. We have a Gadsden flag flying in the skate park. So when people are watching videos of us hanging out in the skate park and 3D printing, they can see that flag. It's that kind of thing that I think will help us in many, many ways fight for freedom. Plus, doing videos about going to the range and learning gun safety. You've got to make cultural content. It cannot just be that the people who are challenging the far left, the extremists, it cannot just be that all they ever do is react to what they're doing and complain about it. There's got to be more, which is why I reduced the amount of content I was producing on this channel and my main channel, Tim Pool, and I've been focusing on expanding the business, focusing on Timcast IRL, the website, and the Cast Castle vlog, most importantly. That's how we win. That's how we fight back. That's how we be most effective. Because if the only thing you ever do is respond to their narrative, you never change the narrative. And I've talked about this in regards to January 6th. The Democrats come out and they say January 6th, 50 billion times. And I'm just like, shut up. Now you got a CNN clip. This lady's like, we are living through Pearl Harbor. It's like, lady, calm down. But the Republicans in Congress react to this. Instead of coming out and reframing things and saying, here's the focal point of the conversation. Let's talk about Antifa, the extremists, the violence, Black Lives Matter. Let's get a commission on COVID. Let's talk about Fauci. Now, they do that. They do. But often they just play to the narrative of the left. So when it comes to January 6th, they respond. They shouldn't. Now it's tough. I know. There's no perfect answers. It's really easy for me to be critical, sitting here in my room yelling at the internet. I get it. But this is the plan. All right, let's learn about what's happening with these riots. I won't stop covering them. But also, let's reframe the conversation. When they try to claim the Gadsden flag as a symbol of the far right and they reassign a National Guardsman from his mission in D.C. because he had a Gadsden flag on his Facebook page, I'm like, yo, we need to make sure that we defend the symbols, the ideologies that we believe in, classical liberalism, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, things like that, and just rational, pragmatic behavior. We need to defend these things, and that means we can't just always be standing in their battlefield talking about what they're doing. So for me, we have a variety of conversations on Timcast IRL. We do the vlog, and in the vlog, we just hang out and have fun because we are going to hit every single, every area we can. So go to timcast.com. Become a member. I had like an hour-long debate with Seamus about pro-life versus pro-choice, what they mean. And we disagree on some things, but we agree on a lot of things. And I thought it was a really, really fascinating conversation. So check it out. But anyway, I digress. I'm not trying to do a promo for the site. I'm trying to point out what we need to do to get away from the repetition that is, we just keep seeing the same thing. It's important to break down what's happening and inform everybody. So that being said, the New York Post reports fiery protests rage yet again in Minneapolis after cops fatally shoot armed fugitive. They say angry protesters lit fires, looted stores, and taunted cops in Minneapolis Thursday after officers shot and killed a man who was a fugitive who whipped out a handgun when authorities closed in on him. Members of a U.S. Marshals task force were attempting to arrest the unidentified man around 2 p.m. on a state warrant for being a felon in possession of a firearm. I'm going to stop and just mention, I'm not a fan of that. A lot of people say, a lot of conservatives have told me that they think that it is right, that if someone commits a felony, they lose the right to keep and bear arms. Completely disagree. Now, it depends on the felony, I suppose. Some people say even violent felons, and I'm like, dude, people take plea deals. Second Amendment doesn't say you lose your right to keep and bear arms if you've been convicted of a crime. I do know it says that your rights can be withheld should you through due process. So I can respect the argument. That would actually make sense when it comes to certain gun control measures. I'm not a fan, though. I think if we want to say, like, it's a blanket thing. That's the problem with it. It's like, oh, you committed a felony, no matter what it is, you can't have a gun. No. It should be like a period. You committed a violent felony, you get like 4 years after leaving prison, then you can't own a gun, something like that. I think people can pay their debt to society, but I digress. Members of a U.S. Marshals task force were attempting to arrest the unidentified man around 2 p.m. on a state warrant for being a felon in possession of a firearm. During the incident, the subject, who was in a parked car, failed to comply and produced a handgun, resulting in task force members firing upon the subject. The Hennepin County Sheriff's Department, which was part of the task force involved in the fatal arrest, said in a statement. Officers attempted to revive the man, but he was declared dead by paramedics on the scene. A woman who was in the car with the suspect sustained minor injuries from shattered glass. Several law enforcement agencies had been involved in the arrest, including local sheriff's offices, as well as the Federal Department of Homeland Security, but not Minneapolis police. Very, very interesting how that works, right? They're sending in the feds. A lot of conservatives have been warning about this, saying that they believe the efforts by Black Lives Matter, by Antifa, would be to federalize the police force. And now we can see this man's a fugitive. The Minneapolis police didn't intervene. I don't think it's completely indicative of that. I do think this guy was wanted on a warrant, so of course the marshals were going to be the ones that were moving in. DHS assisting, I suppose. I don't know if it was a federal warrant or what the issue was. It was a felon with a handgun. But I think actually what we're seeing is the police are backing off. I think normally the police would have assisted. So maybe it is going to result in a federalization of police, or you can say it's resulting in police backing off, which will likely exacerbate crime because, I mean, let's be honest. When the cops back away, the crime comes to stay. How about that one? They say still, protesters shouted insults and anti-cop slogans at Minneapolis police, whose officers were deployed to provide perimeter support. So, okay, so they were actually there. Come on. It was not clear if the bust was tied to scanner reports about a man who was wanted for murder, the Tribune added. The race of neither the suspect nor the officers was mentioned in the statement. But the shooting quickly intensified angry protests. Come on, New York Post. You just told me they were looting stores. Riot. But the shooting quickly intensified angry riots already raging over the dismantling of George Floyd Square, even before any details of the shooting emerged, with videos showing several large fires burning in the street. Police fired flashbangs and numerous buildings were vandalized and stores were looted. Stop burning-ish, one furious woman told people staring at one of the fires, caught in a video by local journalist Rebecca Brannon. Protest group organizers admitted that they were responding even when they didn't know anything about the shooting. Quote, "We understand the anger and ire here when we see these police shootings," Pharaoh Merritt of crime prevention group We Push for Peace told the local paper. The protests were around 3 miles from where George Floyd was killed by ex-cop Derek Chauvin in May last year. So actually, I have the map here. Check this out. So the barriers were dismantled here at George Floyd Square. And then this is where this dude was shot and killed. People started protesting, and they did not even know who the man was. From Jack Posobiec. Antifa activist forgets the name of the person he is out protesting for in Minneapolis. I kid you not. This is the kind of thing that we need people to see. This is the kind of thing. Take a clip of this, share this, whatever you can do. This is what you need. Okay, so you can arm yourself with knowledge. When people are like, "I don't believe you, I don't trust you," bro, Maybe it's not perfect. You can say, here's a guy. He's standing around. They're burning things. They're looting things. And he goes like, I'm gonna be real. I don't even remember the guy's name who got shot. And they're like, oh, it's he's like, oh yeah. He doesn't even know the name of the person he's out protesting for. He's not protesting for him then. Imagine if you like went somewhere and they were like, which musician are you here to see? And there's like 3 stages. You're like, man, I don't even know. Okay, well, you're not here to see him because you don't even know who you're here to see. I have an important business meeting at the top of this skyscraper. And who are you meeting with? I don't know, but I'm here for an important business meeting. They'd be like, have a nice day, sir. He doesn't even know what he's out there for. Come on, man. This is the name of the game, dude. They don't know or care. Protesters had already been out in force in anger at city workers finally dismantling the so-called autonomous zone. No, don't call it that. It's a no-go zone that had blocked off traffic for a year at the site where Floyd was murdered. As soon as workers removed concrete barriers and parts of the memorial blocking the street, around 150 protesters there started parking cars and piling pallets in the streets again. Many remained discussing future plans, with the crowd dwindling after news came of the shooting. Mayor Jacob Frey said it will be a bit touch and go and difficult over the next several days, as the city tries to enforce the new area, which will still keep the several foot tall statues of a raised fist. It's called the Red Salute. That's it. It's called the Red Salute. Now, the left tries to say that it's the Black Power Fist, and I'm like, that's derivative. It is the Red Salute. It is the communist fist. It's a symbol of communism that was used. And people say, but it's used for solidarity. It's used for workers' rights. And I'm like, right. Yeah, all of that is derivative of the communist salute. Don't play games, man. Call whatever you want. You're still doing it. The officers in the latest police shooting were all put on administrative leave. The Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension will lead the investigation. Look at that. So this guy, he's wanted literally for having being a felon in possession of a gun. Now, in this circumstance, I welcome the argument that he should not have had the gun. If it was a guy who was just like, he had a gun and he shouldn't have, so he shot him, I'd be like, nah, that's bad, man. Like Philando Castile had a gun and people argue, yeah, but he had pot as well. It's like, dude, no. We're right, keeping bear arms, shall not be infringed under no pretext. In this instance, this guy was a felon. So while I can certainly advocate for restoring the rights of people to keep and bear arms, Constitution does give leeway for rescinding that right should someone go through due process. They have their due process. So his right to keep and bear arms was taken. This is a guy who was armed and he shouldn't have been. And so something happened with the police. Now the cops are all on leave. Yeah. Surprise, man. This is the name of the game. This is what we can come to expect. Now, I'll tell you what really irks me about all of this is how obvious everything has been in terms of the exploitation and the expansion of the Marxist ideology and what they're really trying to go for. While you have a guy on the ground who doesn't know what he's protesting for, he doesn't even know the guy's name. What he does still helps guarantee that the giant communist fist will remain in the center of this intersection. Well, it creates a roundabout, I suppose, so that can help save lives. But I'm not a fan of there being a giant communist fist, being put up in the United States. And for that matter, our embassies have begun flying giant communist fists. Why? Because they're serious. I can't remember who said it, but we were talking about it last night in the IRL podcast. The left is serious. And I know many on the right are, but many on the right aren't. They're just unfortunately not serious. They vote for Republicans like Mitch McConnell. Now, don't get me wrong. Voting for Donald Trump was proof that many Republicans and many more, as more and more people started to vote for Trump and support him, shows that many more on the right were becoming serious. So we'll see what happens next in 2022. But if you take a look at the strategy of the left and everything they've been doing, they're going to keep gaining ground. It's an erosion. People on the right are not good at this. I'm not saying that to be disrespectful, but it's true. The left knows how to organize. They know how to frame conversations. They know how to create. They know how to do it. They have infiltrated media. They've infiltrated the federal government. And now what happens? Joe Biden comes out and he blames white supremacy. Okay, well, how many right wing of protests have there been? It was the riot at the Capitol on January 6th. They called it an insurrection. What do you call this? Sustained. So let me explain what we often see. The left does what I refer to as blunt force tactics. They'll punch you in the face. Not enough damage to make national news, right? It's not going to make national news that you went outside and some guy punched you. No one's going to care. But they all do it. So when you have thousands of instances of regular people being beaten, none of these on their own rise to the level of being national news. What happens? No one hears about it. But the people who experience it tell their friends, and the people who see it happening locally get scared and then bend the knee. On the right, they do what we often see on the fringe right, what I would refer to as like acute force tactics. And that's where you see like storming the Capitol building in D.C. That's serious. Of course, it'll make national news. That's where the Electoral College vote was happening, and it was disrupted. So while it was just a riot at one building, this is a very important building. So because of that, that's all anyone hears about. It's juicy. It's salacious. The media can run with it. The media can't run with Antifa punches guy. Nobody cares. Now, when it happened to Andy Ngo, they can. The first time he got attacked, it became so serious. I mean, just brutally beaten, teeth bleeding, ears bleeding, that mainstream media was finally forced to cover it. Now we have another instance where they're finally being forced to cover it, although this one's a little bit different. The first time around, it was finally a shock to the system. I don't think this latest attack on Andy will have the same impact because, well, look, the left controls the cultural institutions, and you can break through once, but you have to like keep changing strategies. It reminds it really is a lot like fighting the Borg, and I'll explain. How many of you are fans of Star Trek: The Next Generation? In that episode where they first encounter the Borg, Q sends them off to the Delta Quadrant or whatever, and when they're firing their phasers on the Borg, the phasers work. The next time they fire, phasers don't work. So then they have to modulate frequencies to try and actually deal damage to the Borg. Long story short, if you don't like my Star Trek analogy, the point is you can only try the same tactics so many times, right? Things become less and less effective because they're very much the Borg. They're a collective hive. They sacrifice their own in order to make political gains, to gain power. And it's a very difficult thing to defeat. I'll show you the sacrifices they're willing to make. So this is, here's what I tweeted. They decided killing hundreds of thousands of people in a pandemic was worth having BLM protests. So this Twitter user, Amanda, says, yep, this was my woke breaking point last year. In one tweet, a guy named Carl T. Bergstrom, verified Twitter user, says, many people have asked me whether the ongoing Black Lives Matter protests around the country pose a risk of increasing coronavirus spread. As a scientist, I acknowledge that they may. As a citizen, I wholeheartedly support the protest nonetheless. And then he goes on to say, police tactics are bad and we have to stop this. You then have Dr. Ellie Murray, verified. Angry commenters are trying to gotcha me on this tweet. So let me be clear. Yes, I condemn the anti-lockdown protests. Yes, I support Black Lives Matter protests. No, those aren't contradictory views. COVID is a public health emergency. So is racism. We need to fight both. Lady, the anti-lockdown protests inadvertently supported the Black Lives Matter protests. It is contradictory. If you agree with the right of people to go out and protest, the anti-lockdown protesters agreed with you. Not rioting, by the way. But look at all of these. Look at these posts. She said, thank you, Dr. Bender Ignacio, that's his name, and colleagues for writing this open letter on an anti-racist public health response to protest against systemic injustice. I have signed it. Yeah. You get the point. Dear Twitter, please sign and pass it on. They wanted everybody to go out and riot. Mass riots last year during a pandemic. Check this out. Here we go. Newsweek. More than 1,500 Minnesota businesses damaged in George Floyd protests. Expect to take years to rebuild. A year on. We have nothing for David Dorn, a retired police captain who was trying to check up on his friend's business, was shot and killed by a violent criminal as these people rioted, as they supported the rioters, as Kamala Harris defended them. This is what the right needs to do. They need to be reframing the discussion. They need to be in control of the narrative. They need to get better at how this works. Now, I get it. Left-wing media is real good at controlling the narrative. They've infiltrated the news organizations. It's funny. I was talking about MSNBC on, I can't remember who we were talking with. I was watching that movie Deep Impact where if you haven't seen it, it's a reporter. She works for MSNBC and she discovers there's going to be an extinction level event. Comet's going to hit the earth or something. And back then, MSNBC was a serious news outlet. Now it's just left-wing, garbage propaganda. But I was told that it used to position itself as right of center. And I think even Tucker Carlson was on MSNBC at one point. So there was a huge dramatic shift. They were infiltrated. They found a path to money and they took it. Republicans, conservatives, moderates, anti-woke, the intellectual dark web types, whatever you want to call it, need to start understanding how these tactics work and how you need to reframe things and break through. So long as massive multinational corporations think their path towards making money is through wokeness, they'll keep doing it. So long as they do and put money into it, YouTube will say, we side with this. YouTube cares about money. Yes, there's a lot of ideologues at YouTube, but they're concerned about losing ad revenue. So what do they say? Anything that would offend or scare our advertisers, we'll push back on. So I'll tell you one thing, my friends. The ultimate technique, the ultimate tactic. Here's what you want to do. If you are looking for something to do to have a serious impact to change the world, start getting jobs at advertising agencies. I'm not kidding. Because that's where the money is for these big businesses. And when someone walks in and they go to the meeting and they're like, here's our plan for a commercial. And it's like an anti-woke commercial. They're just going to say, okay, here's the money, go do it. And that shapes culture. But for now, look at what Joe Biden said. Joe Biden said this recently. He's like, I challenge you, man. You know, 2 to 3 out of 5. 2 to 3 out of 5, sure. 2 to 3 out of 5 of commercials to mixed race family. What are they doing? Selling soap, man. That's what he said. I think he was trying to argue that things are good, like advertising is showing that there's like diversity on the way or something. But the point I'm bringing up is it's true. TV commercials do overwhelmingly show mixed race families these days. And the reason for it is they're trying to advertise to the widest market possible. I don't think they're doing it. I think it's a very serious challenge. They're trying to be like, you have like a black woman, so they're trying to market to her, and you have like a white man. But in the end, speaking as a mixed race person, it just ends up becoming kind of strange that they're marketing to one of the smallest demographics in the country, mixed race people, of which there is no monolith. Because just because you are of different backgrounds doesn't mean you associate with somebody who's mixed race as well. I digress. The point is, advertising shapes everything else. If the advertisers came out and said, we are angry that YouTube is pushing this or that ideology or Marxism, YouTube would ban it in 2 seconds. Now, it would cause a mass freak out within YouTube. Don't get you absolutely. But that's the reality. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 1 p.m. on this channel. Thanks for hanging out, and I will see you all then.